Good morning. Today is Monday, March 23rd. It's 10 a.m. This is a continuation of our series of podcasts concerning the current shelter-in-place orders and the effects of COVID-19, specifically in the area of family law. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce our panel. If you have any questions for the users, please make sure that you message them. We'll get them answered. Other than that, we'll give the participants, our legal team at Family Law Matters, and we're also joined by Jennie. She is a financial expert who is going to kind of give us some tips and tricks to use, talk about the consequences of COVID-19, and talk about kind of what to do, what not to do, and help us in the meantime, in the next couple of 2 to 3 weeks, kind of put in place some safety precautions. So without further ado, I'm going to start with Miss Gina Famularo. Gina, I'm going to unmute you. Let's do a brief intro.
Hi, I'm Gina Famularo. I'm one of the partners at Family Law Matters. I have been an attorney for 23 years as of May 2020. I have practiced family law my entire career, 9 years in Orange County and 13 years in Riverside County.
Perfect. Thank you, Gina. Ms. Colleen, you're up next.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Colleen Robinson. I'm an attorney at Family Law Matters. I've been an attorney now for 10 years, going on 11 in December. I have practiced almost exclusively in family law throughout Southern California.
Perfect. Thank you, Colleen. And then Miss Christy, you have been unmuted. You're next.
Morning, everyone. My name is Christy Bergamo. I am a senior attorney here at Family Law Matters. I've been practicing for 17 years exclusively in family law. I've also been an attorney for children in the courts and ordered to be that by the judges. So I have that unique experience as well. And I just want to welcome everybody, and I hope everybody's doing okay given the circumstances.
Thank you, Christy. And now I'm going to introduce our financial experts, Jennie Erdman. Tell us a little bit about you, Jennie.
Hi, good morning, everybody. So I'm a financial planner in San Diego. About half of my business is locally based and the other half is all remote financial planning. And so I've been in business about 10 years. I actually went into business in 2008. So I'm very familiar with economic crisis and how it can affect individuals and businesses for sure. Obviously this one is quite different. So I'm just here today to answer some questions, hopefully give you guys a little bit of forward perspective on what we can expect and what you can do as individuals to sort of mitigate the fallout from this virus.
Thank you, Jennie. And Jennie, there's one piece of your background that you did not mention, that you are also a lawyer.
Yes, so I am a lawyer. I'm a recovering attorney, actually. And my company, I just got a message, I should say what my company is. It's Chisholm Financial Planning and Investments.
Awesome. Thank you, Jennie. Okay, so Jennie, while I have you here, actually, let me do a brief intro of myself. So I'm Bishore Shahada. I'm also an attorney. Again, I'm the youngest attorney on the panel, but I'm joined by decades and decades of experience. And with that said, Jennie, so tell us what's happening right now.
Oh my gosh, what a loaded question. So what we are seeing right now is, so we've got two big issues. We've got the virus, which, the US government and local governments have all ordered now, for the most, not all of them, but many of them have ordered shelter in place. We have been ordered to work from home. Basically, the economy as a result from this has become issue number 2, in that we've sort of started to grind to a halt. What we saw with the fallout of shelter in place is small businesses have had to lay off workers. Actually, large corporations like hotel chains, airlines are either furloughing or also laying off workers. And so it's sort of created an issue, a situation where, yeah, we have this virus, but now we have this other big long-term potential problem of an economic meltdown. And so I think this week what we're really seeing is going to be less about the virus itself, as numbers have actually started to come back looking better. And we've sort of have some drugs and things like that can treat it. There's a little bit more hope on that front. And now I think we've got the federal government in particular and state and local governments really thinking about how can they keep the liquidity flowing in this economy? How can we stop things from grinding to a halt? and what's the next step would be, because the economic crisis and meltdown may end up being worse than the virus if we don't address that as well.
Okay, so in your area of expertise, what are you guys, in a way, predicting is going to happen?
So, and this is all prediction. So, no one knows. If I knew, I would have been on a private island somewhere already. But I will say this morning and late yesterday, there was some movement and louder voices to try to figure out a solution to this virus and get us back to work. I think there's a recognition that at this point, we need to battle the virus, but we are making things possibly much worse than this virus by stopping our economy. And I think maybe the people listening, some of you may have been laid off, and some of you have probably been through 2008. And the truth is, an economic crisis causes just as much pain and death and destruction as this virus so far has caused. You're talking about, families coming undone, talking about drugs and alcohol abuse, homelessness. There are some reports that we're going to see a 30% temporary unemployment. And so, I'm sorry. Yeah. So so moving forward. Yeah. So that's really what you guys want to hear about. I think there is some movement to figure out how to combat this virus and get back to work. So my guess, and I'm just guessing from a couple things I've seen in the media, particularly Boeing this morning mentioned that they're going to continue work as if we're going back to work. They're not going to lay anybody off. To me, that indicates they must be in communication with this administration. They're probably indicating to these large corporations there is light at the end of their tunnel. And my guess is early next week, middle of next week, some of us will start going back to work. We'll start opening up parts of our economy. We have seen in the Netherlands and Israel, they are doing a different trial as far as how to combat the virus. And what that consists of is really letting the younger people, the healthy people, go back to work and isolating those who are highly at risk, because I think that they have realized the economic fallout of this could be quite substantial, and we need to combat the virus maybe in a different way.
Awesome. And with that said, what tricks and what advice would you have for the community, for our community that's going through this, the do's and don'ts?
Yeah, so there's really two ways you want to look at this, right? We're all here as a community. We all want to get through it and help each other, but we also need to, in order to help anybody else, we have to help ourselves. And so the first thing you want to do is take care of yourself and your family. And so if you're having a financial issue of any kind, if you're worried about cash flow, I have some clients who have been laid off, and their spouses have been laid off. The first thing I would do is, deal with your cash flow issues, and we can talk more specifically about that. Really focus on cutting your budget, making sure you're not spending money you don't need right now, because the truth is, while I am very hopeful, and many of us are, that as soon as we can get back to work, this recovery will probably be pretty quick. It could go on, it could go through the end of the year. So you want to make sure that you don't spend any cash you don't need. And on the other hand, we're all a community here, and we do want to make sure that we try to support local businesses as much as we can. But we don't want to be willy-nilly about that. I know there's a big movement to support the local, like get takeout, things like that. And if you feel that you can financially do that and carry that on for 6 months, then I think that's great. But if you're really worried about your cash flow and things like that, then I would really try to reduce your spending for the foreseeable few weeks and really see where the chips fall first.
And can you be more specific as to the areas where people should cut their budget?
Yes. So the first thing I would recommend doing is, if you're really worried about the next few months or year, look at your credit and debit statements and cut and stop all of your auto pays. Okay. So if you are auto paying anything, stop it. Now, obviously some things you're going to have to keep paying, like your water, but if you have a gym membership, get rid of it. Right now you can't even go, right? If you have a cable bill, truthfully, YouTube's free. If you're really, really worried about cash flow, $150 a month cable bill needs to go away. So those are all types of things that you can do first. You can do that all today. The second thing I would recommend, and actually Gina reminded me of this, is if you do have credit cards or things like that either have balances or you may need to carry a balance on, and I'll talk about that in a second, call them today. See if you can either negotiate a lower interest rate. They will often do that even in times not of economic crisis. Or if they will accept late payments and waive fees, you can try to negotiate. They may not, but it's worth a call. The other thing that I would really, really be conscious of is not burning cash. So, you know, if you only have a limited amount of cash right now, you may need it. You may need it to pay bills that are only cash, rent, things like that. So while this is not ideal, if you do have some sort of credit, whether it be a credit card or a personal loan, you may want to try to use that to supplement your life a little bit rather than using your cash. So that way you have that cash while this continues on. That is not an ideal long-term solution, but that may bridge the gap until things can get back in place. Maybe you can get reemployed and money comes in. There was a couple other things we talked about before y'all hopped on. One is they have extended the tax deadline, both in California and the feds. And so what that means for those of you who think you're going to get a refund, I would file immediately because there's going to be a rush to file now because they're still going to pay the refunds. So if you think cash might be an issue, I mean, today, get off the phone and get rid of all your auto pay, call your credit cards, and file your taxes. Those are the first things you can do. If you do not anticipate a refund, I would probably wait and not pay. You can still file and not pay. They're allowing you to do that. But, you know, I would hoard cash a little bit right now. I would really not let it go. Even if you feel like you're in a good position, I would just wait and see how this all pans out.
And if I may also add to that, Jenny, a piece of information that I know and I've been told because I have family that works in the auto industry is if you're leasing a vehicle or if you own a vehicle and you're making payments on it, if you reach out to the banks, most of the banks, at least I know the credit unions, are considering deferring your payments for 3 months at no penalty. So if you have a $600 or $700 car payment that goes out monthly, it's a good way to kick it out for 90 days just to kind of, again, conserve on your spending, conserve the cash, and help you focus on the essentials.
Yeah, that's actually, Bishoy, that is wonderful. And that reminds me, we also want to remind you guys that if you have a federal student loan, they are also allowing deferred payments on that. So just like the car loan is if it's something you can push off without penalty, then maybe you hold off on those student loan payments this month or the next couple months, use that money for the living expenses, things like that, until you can get back on your feet with the economy.
Thank you. And then here's a more scary conversation, a more scary topic. So should people be considering bankruptcy at the moment?
My answer is no. This hopefully will only be a month or 6 week or 2 month gap, which I know for some people can be quite scary and financially very detrimental. But bankruptcy, I'll tell you right now, might seem like a good solution and easier, but it is awful. You get 2 weeks into that thing and you're going to wish you paid off your debt. It's very administratively, time-wise costly. It's not cheap. It's not free. And they don't get rid of things like student loans, back taxes, child support payments. Like a lot of these things that you wish you could relieve yourself of won't go away. So I think at this point, I would put bankruptcy off the table and really focus on hoarding your cash, paying as many of your bills as you can, but also putting aside any that you can. So, you know, student debt, anything like that, just put it down. You can always catch up later. But bankruptcy, if this continues on for a long time, may be an option people need to consider. But at this juncture, I would say if you can hold on another few weeks, put that out of your mind. Like, it's not worth doing.
And on the topic of bankruptcy, can you talk about the long-term ramifications if someone is considering filing a bankruptcy right now?
Yeah, so without getting too in the weeds is once you filed bankruptcy, and it depends on what bankruptcy, there's different ones you can file, but generally for individuals, you won't be able to buy a house for 5 years. Your credit is going to be totally in the tank. So anything you do want to do, like purchase a new car, I mean, your interest rate is going to be like 8%, 10%, very, very high. And, you know, it's going to feel great maybe that first year, like, oh, I have no debt. And then when you do want to move on financially, it's going to be really, really hard. No one will lend to you. And it carries with you. It actually stays on your record, I think 10 years. So it's there. So it's not worth doing. It's much easier, truthfully, to try to avoid that process and not go down that road.
Thank you. And what about hoarding cash? I know you've brought it up a couple of times. What does that mean? Does it mean keep your savings?
Yeah. Now is not the time to pay off your credit card debt. Okay. That is not what we need to be doing now. Now is not the time to be buying a boat or anything like that. It's the time really to just use the money to buy food, cover your rent. I know that there are some landlords locally who are going to waive rent or let it be delayed, but you're going to need to check with your landlord on that. And I wouldn't assume that's going to be the case. A lot of these landlords do rely on this rent as their living expenses, right? So if you need to pay your rent, pay your rent. All your basic living requirements that you need to pay in cash, go for it. But I wouldn't go above and beyond that. I would just wait and see, because you may need the cash to sustain you if this goes on for a few months.
And speaking of landlords and renting, what if people can't make their mortgage payments? Should they be listing their homes for sale?
No, I would hold off on that. So some of the banks will be allowing late payment so when I say waive, let me just be clear. No one's going to not end up paying these bills. You will end up paying them. It just might be at a later date when it's more financially feasible. So they may just say, you have 3 months or something like that. But if this thing gets back up and running, if our economy gets back up and running in the next month, I wouldn't expect that you're going to need to sell your house or anything like that. I will expect possibly you'll have a little bit of a crunch. You'll have to get caught up. But yeah, as far as worrying about selling your house, I wouldn't do that yet. Now, if you do think you're not going to be able to pay your mortgage or your rent, it's always a good idea to contact the lender or your landlord and let them know and talk to them. These are, especially right now, this isn't something that's just they understand what's happening. And so I think a little bit of notice is always good, and conversation with them.
Okay. And what about 401ks? Should people consider cashing out their 401ks if need be, or no?
No.
There. So please elaborate.
Yeah. So actually what I recommend, and this is not, I'm not going to post this online, but don't look at your 401k right now. Like, honestly, don't log in, don't look at it, do nothing, pretend it doesn't exist, pretend it's back up to 30 with the Dow, and just move on, because the truth is, this may not be the bottom. So we may see the market decline further. So don't panic about that. That is not unexpected. And if it does, it does. The thing is you need to just let it lie. You're not going to lose any money unless you sell those positions. Okay. And if you don't need the money, if you're young right now, this is actually an opportunity for you. Okay. So, and that's a little bit more in the weeds, but essentially just let it go. In a year or two, we're going to all look back on this coronavirus and maybe not chuckle, but it's going to be like, oh yeah, that thing. So I really just don't do anything that's detrimental. Never make financial decisions out of panic. That's never a good way to go. And I know that's easier said than done. If you are closer to retirement, because I do have this as the case with many of my clients, if you are closer or in retirement, you may want to talk to someone and evaluate. Do not sell positions. Don't panic. But you may need to talk to someone about your current cash flow needs, and there might be some planning that needs to be done right now. That doesn't involve selling all your positions, but based on your individual circumstances.
And what about, on that note, should they stop contributing to the 401ks right now?
No. Now is the time to contribute, because stocks are on sale. They're like 40% off right now. So one of the positives about this whole thing, which I know probably some of you are rolling your eyes, but many people were unable to get into the market a few months ago, because the last decade, we're at an all-time high. We've been at an all-time high for months, literally a year. And people were very nervous to get into the market because they assumed there was going to be a recession. And well, here we are, we're at some sort of downturn. And so this has actually allowed people to get into the market. I have many clients, and don't do this unless you have the money, who have bought into the market. There's investors who have moved millions of dollars in because these stocks are on sale. So if you are contributing and you don't need the cash flow, okay, so there's that what do we need now and what do we need later? If you feel like your job's fine or you have the financial ability to wear through this storm, then keep contributing. And if you can increase it, even great, because what you're doing is you're just buying at a super low. So one of the places you can make cuts, though, if you are really concerned about your cash flow, maybe your spouse lost their job or something like that, you can reduce your contributions to your retirement. If that's going to get you through right now, that might be worth it. But if you don't have to do that, keep going. It's the best thing you can do.
Awesome. And then Christy, I'm going to ask you to jump in on here, because obviously as we're talking about finances, the most common question that we're going to get from our clients or clients that are through the court system in a family law case is support. So how does that affect support payments? And I know we briefly touched on it a couple of webinars ago, but I do want to remind our clients, since we are on the topic of finances, please.
Well, I think what's going to happen here, and I think Jennie is illustrating where there's going to, or at least how people can loosen up, if you will, certain expenses in order to pay for these other things. And I think Jennie indicated that child support is obviously not something that can be extinguished by way of a bankruptcy or anything like that. So I think what we addressed the other day in our webinar is that, again, the communication with the other side. So if you're the payor and your work's been reduced or you've been terminated from your employment, then you first need to communicate that with the other side so that they're aware. Try to come up with something that you can give them, because this is your child. And maybe it comes with limiting your subscriptions, as Jennie indicated. But you need to communicate, number one. You need to file for a request for a reduction of your support immediately. And you need to contact us about that so we can assist you in doing that. Because what happens is you won't get into court for a while. The courts are effectually closed right now. So you will get a date probably, I would say, as I sit here today, June, maybe July. But if you file it now, don't sit and wait. Because if you file it now, the court will reserve retroactivity, which means that even though there are all these months that are going to go in between of when you file and when you get your court date, the court will go back to and adjust your support back to the date you filed, not the day you're heard. So it is imperative, if you're the payor and you've lost your job or it's been reduced or whatever the circumstances are, that you file that request immediately. Now, if you're the recipient of support and in fact the payor has lost their job or something to that effect, the court will consider that as a basis to modify. So unfortunately that, and hopefully it's just temporary. I'm hearing very positive statements right now that maybe we're going to weather this storm, and hopefully it will only be a month, 2 months, and then everything will go back to normal. But if the other side files their request to modify, I'll give a scenario. They file a request to modify, so there's a couple months in there that they're not working, but say they get their job again, they are going to get that relief for that period of time that they were unemployed, unless for some miracle the employer retroactively gives them their income back, which I highly doubt would happen under these circumstances. So again, reach out to us. We can enter into that stipulation and maybe not have to go to court on that issue if in fact those are the circumstances. So it's really case by case. We're here to run numbers to see what that looks like. When I say run numbers, we can run support figures and see and maybe work it out somehow that we don't have to get the courts involved. But however, I can't stress it enough. If you've lost your job, you need to file something immediately to request the relief sought. Spousal and child support are a little different. Child support is based on gross incomes of the parties plus a few minor adjustments, like how often you see the child, do you pay health insurance, etc. Spousal support is a little different, and I foresee that that's going to be a major area where the people who are receiving it may be not receiving it anymore, because the factors the courts are going to consider is what's the financial circumstance now of the party paying. And if the assumption is by Jennie that, you know, they're going to hoard their cash, but if they have to live off their savings for a significant period of time, then that to me would seem to be a very relevant factor in, if not reducing, but eliminating spousal support orders.
Thank you, Christy. And Colleen, I'm going to ask you to chime in on here because it's a similar topic. If I filed a request for order to modify support, do I still have to pay the support until the court date?
So it is still a court order, and I think that we had talked about this previously in our other podcasts. Even with custody, that is what the court order is, and that's why it's imperative that you contact our office. If we file the motion to modify, nothing gets modified unless we have a stipulation in writing that's signed by all the parties and filed with the court, but nothing is changing your court order in terms of your obligation. So it's not an automatic stay, if you will, in terms of what your support obligation is. When we come to court, the court is still going to expect that you have tried to make your support payment. I know we talked about, well, if you've lost your job or your income's being reduced, communicating that with the other side, reaching out to our office and seeing if we can reach, as Christy was just saying, a temporary agreement until we get to court and see what these projections are, what's going to be happening in the next couple of months before we get to court as well.
Thank you, Colleen. And Jennie, I want to get it back to you. We talked about all the possible ways that the public in general, our viewers, can reduce their expenses, but what sort of government relief or government help are we expecting?
Well, so it's funny that you asked that. They are currently in the process of figuring out this third part of their aid package. And it's going to come down to two different ways that aid is going to be rendered. So the first thing I should say is there's federal aid, and then there's going to be some local, which truthfully, we're still trying to figure out exactly for small businesses, particularly what the local is going to look like. But my guess is there will be some. So it's something you're definitely going to want to stay tuned and, in tune with. But, and that's something like, I know a lot of my social media and others like me will be putting on their social media. So you should be able to find out as we know more. But federally, there's really two routes this is going to go. It's either going to be direct payments to individuals. And I know that that's been something that's been talked about. But this next stimulus, my guess is, just from what's being negotiated right now, is they're hoping to give small businesses and large companies interest or low interest or interest-free loans from the federal government to be able to keep their payroll going. And I think that's really what we're going to expect. I think the hope of the current administration in the environment is that we can really just keep the wheel going and avoid more and more layoffs, because truly the layoffs are really going to be temporary is the hope. It's just while we have this liquidity problem with the economy halting. So I think, unfortunately, we won't really know if that's going to work out today. It looks like it's going to. The market numbers are reflecting that they will probably be doing loans to these companies, which is good, because the goal really we want people to be able to keep working. We don't want people to be at home, waiting for 60% of their income in a form of unemployment. That's not good for anybody. And so hopefully we'll see that this week. My guess is by end of today, we'll see some resolution.
Awesome. Thank you. And then Gina, I'm going to ask you to chime in if you have any tips for our listeners or any additional questions for Jennie. Let me go ahead and unmute you. Go ahead.
Jennie, we have a lot of clients where their sole source of income is support from the other side. Do you have any advice for listeners who perhaps are relying on income from another side who has just been laid off?
Yeah, so the advice would still be very much the same. I mean, I think communication, which I know in some of these situations may not be ideal, right? This is probably not your favorite person to talk to, but I think discussing these things ahead of time, and understanding that these are out of people's control, right? I mean, this loss of income for anyone paying support is not what they're hoping to have happen. I think cutting your expenses. So, if your main source of income is this support, it's going to be the same. Just like if your main source of income was a job, or other types of income, rental income, you are going to want to look at what you're spending right now. If you can make any immediate cuts, then go ahead and do so. If you can avoid certain outlays, then do so. If you think that this temporary cut in support is going to make it unable for you to pay your full amount of rent or your credit cards, those are the same steps you want to take. You want to talk to your landlord. You want to see if maybe you can pay half or a portion and catch up in a month or two, and explain about the support. Just like I said, communication. But it's still the same. You still want to make cuts. The worst thing you can do is get upset and angry and panicky. And I know that's easier said than done. The best thing you can do is just, this is what it is. And so for now, you're going to have to reduce your cash flow. And just like the rest of us, kind of hope that this is a short-term liquidity problem. And when things get back in order, you may have to play some catch up.
These people won't qualify for unemployment benefits because they're not employed. Is there any place that they can go to perhaps get some cash coming in?
Let me think about that. That is a really good point. Well, I think the first thing I would do is sit down and do a budget before you even worry about trying to get income or loans from somewhere else. If that's not going to work, then yeah, your next step would be, I would look at maybe a personal loan, if that's something that's possible. I know it depends on if you are not working, it's hard to get people to lend you money. I know there are some nonprofits locally who are assisting people in these types of scenarios. Unfortunately, I'm not really an expert on exactly what's going on. So truthfully, I would probably look locally, see what kind of help there is. But the best thing you can do is try to work with the spouse who's paying, the payor, and figure out if there's some way that you can reduce your cash flow, and work on this temporary basis as to the realities.
And there's also the option of food stamps and possibly your local church.
Yes. Bashoy, you bring up a great point that I totally neglected is, there are, if you're military, there's a lot of aid out there. If you're not military, food stamps, maybe your local church. I would talk to the priest or the pastor or the rabbi and kind of communicate to them what's going on. I know I've seen personally a lot of the communities coming together. So Bashoy, you make a good point is, rather than surf the internet, maybe talk to some people of community leaders that you're involved with and go from there.
And there's also the Aid for Dependent Children. That's the food stamp. So that was another good source. Okay, Miss Christy, any additional points, any additional tips for our listeners? Let me go ahead and unmute you. Go ahead.
Well, B, I think this has been our theme since this all happened, is that, we are in uncharted waters. There is a considerable amount of uncertainty. And I think the goal is here, and I think Jennie said it, is don't panic. We're here, we're all going through this together, and we will get through it. And I think that everybody just needs to understand that. And hopefully we are here to help you. So.
Thank you, Christy. And I want to add one quick point to that. This is in a way a really good time to settle your case. This is a good time to avoid litigation and put your pen on paper and start sending out those settlement offers. This is a really good time to take advantage of that. It may avoid all additional unnecessary costs like trial fees, things of the sort. Colleen, do you have any comments to add to anything that we've said so far?
A further note just about not panicking. Because Jennie said, we make the worst decisions when we panic. And what I remind myself in moments like that is, one, just to take a deep breath and then figure out, okay, what steps can I take to address how I'm feeling? So if, like Jenny, putting a pen to paper, what is my budget? Where is my money going? What can I cut? Those are steps that you can take right now that are going to help you right now, rather than where am I going to go? What's going to happen? What's going to happen with my job? Can I pay the mortgage next month? You know, those are all things that we don't know and that's going to happen in the future. But when you tackle things just like a little bit at a time, you feel a lot better. I feel a lot better when I do that, and establishing a plan that I can start doing things right now, rather than in the sea of uncertainty and just letting me drown in that, which is just an awful feeling. And I also, like you just said, B, is now, you know, now is the time to try to settle your case, because we don't know what's going to be going on at the courthouse. And that's one area that you do have control over. So the more that we can negotiate out of court, everybody participates in that, rather than like leaving that to a judge to decide whenever, is in my mind always the best outcome.
And Colleen, on that note, you are our mediator. You have taken the role of a mediator at the firm, so tell us a little bit about that and how that can help clients.
Jennie also is a financial mediator. She's a financial neutral as well. In my experience thus far with doing mediations, it's empowering for people, because you are determining the outcome of your own case, all the important aspects of your life. And you're in the driver's seat in that respect, rather than having it decided by the courthouse and by a judge that may or may not have spent a whole lot of time reviewing your case and doesn't know the intricacies of your family life. It is very transformative. It can be a very transformative experience too, because the heart of it all, it comes down to communication with one another. And the things that people wind up sharing in the mediation room are things that maybe they didn't share during their marriage as well. And it's a very eye-opening experience. But again, it's getting everybody to talk and to think about what are the solutions here moving forward. And you're determining the outcomes, and that is bringing certainty to your life. So as someone once told me, and I'm sure Christy might disagree because she has a different philosophy, and a day out of court is a day out of court, and that's usually in everybody's best interest. Sorry, Christy.
So on that note, Christy, is mediation still happening even if court's closed?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Is mediation still taking place even though the court's closed? I know mediation.
That's the beautiful thing about mediation. It can happen anywhere. And right now, everything is remote. So we're doing it on Zoom like we are here. So it can happen over the phone. It can happen in the comfort of your own home. It doesn't have to be at the courthouse. So it is a very flexible structure.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And then I'm going to go ahead and go around and just allow Jennie one more time to kind of just tell us what you do. Tell us if our clients or viewers, participants have any questions for you, how they can reach you. And I do want to thank you in advance for taking the time out of your day. I'm sure you're swarmed with phone calls and questions, and your clients are maybe in panic. So please. Yeah.
Well, so actually one of the things I will say is I don't want to say thankful for this because that's awful, but I have found, for me, I have gotten a lot closer to my clients. And so I think all of us can look around and think about how this has united some of us. In bad times are the best for creating bonds, truly. And the other thing I want to leave people with before I give you my sales spiel is things are never as bad as we think they're going to be. So just think of all the crises, all the disasters you've had in your own lives, and think about all the things you thought they were going to be like, and they were never as bad. So we'll make it through this. As far as contacting me, so I offer full service financial planning and investment advice, which right now is just don't sell. And I also do, as Colleen mentioned, I do a lot of divorce financial planning work. So sometimes if you need a valuation of a pension, things like that, or if you're in settlement negotiations, I'll sometimes do some recommendations based on that, or I will do a mediation as a neutral. I do that in town as a consultant. And so you can contact me. My website is chisholmfinancialplanning.com, and that is CHISHOLM financialplanning.com. And yeah, so that's probably the best way. Just go to my website. You can also email me, actually, Jennie at chisholmfinancialplanning.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jennie. And just a couple of closing remarks. I want to remind everyone that the courts are tentatively closed until April 5th. So if you have a court hearing scheduled after that date, as of now, it's unknown whether that is going to go forward or not. We're going to presume that it will. The courts will reopen April 5th. But as soon as we get updates from the court, we will let you know. We were hoping that April 5th will be the deadline. Here at Family Law Matters, our attorneys, we've had our morning meeting this morning, and one of our goals is every week to reach out to our clients to answer any questions that you may have, to give you guidance, walk you through, put pen on paper and start sending out some settlement offers, and try to close the cases as quickly as possible. And other than that, we'll be here again tomorrow at 10 a.m. Tomorrow's topic will be concerning, again, the shelter in place and custody. We've received a lot of questions concerning that, so we want to address them. So tomorrow, 10 a.m., you'll be joined with your legal community here at Family Law Matters. Please send us your questions. If not, it's the same link. Rejoin the link. Again, Gina, Christy, Colleen, and Jennie, I really thank you guys for taking the time and answering these questions. You guys are amazing and wonderful, and please stay safe. Gina, can you close us out with a prayer? Let me go ahead and unmute you.
Dear Lord, thank you for the opportunity to come together as a community. We ask that you bless each and every one of us on this webinar, each and every person in our community. We ask you to protect us, fill us with the Holy Spirit, and allow good to come from this crisis. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Gina. The recording will be posted on all of our social media. Thank you all for participating, and we will see you tomorrow at 10 a.m.
Bye.
Bye.